This was just going to be a question and answer thing. So if you guys have any questions about art, uh, comics in general, the business, sorry. I ran up the escalators. So yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask.
Do you work by hand or do you do computer art?
It's a little mixture of both. Everything I do is done by hand. The line art, I'm old school. It's just pencil on paper. Then the inks are sometimes done digitally. Sometimes I ink it with a brush, and the coloring is always done on Photoshop.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm unfamiliar with your background. Can you describe yourself?
I was born in South Korea. I came to the United States when I was 5. I always wanted to draw comic books. I loved reading comics, and I started drawing in 1990. I've been doing this for a long time. And my first job was Marvel Comics Presents, and I've done stuff like, I've drawn everything from Batman, Superman, X-Men, Spider-Man. I've worked with Stephen King on the Dark Tower comic books and the Inhumans. So yeah, I've been around for a long time. I'm an old dinosaur now.
Yep.
Yes.
You did some of the Dreamwave Transformers books, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Is it harder to make characters like expressive and dynamic when they're largely square compared to human shapes?
It is, but the robots, the book that I drew was it was Transformers versus G.I. Joe. It was set during World War II, and I'm terrible with machines, with vehicles, so this was not a project for me. But the reason I found it appealing was because it was set in World War II, and I love the photographs from that era, the artwork that came out of that era, and so when I got the designs, the designs were done by an artist named Don Figuera. He had already worked out how the robots transform, what kind of vehicles they transform into. They were going to be World War II military vehicles, and but they were still, like really shiny, brand new looking things, and that's not what I'm good at. So what I did when I got those designs was I made everything all broken down. Wires were hanging out of them. Everything was kind of rusty and old, and battle damaged, and that's the part that I found fun. I did do a disservice to the artist because Don put a lot of work into it, and I ended up just covering most of it in shadows and doing my own thing with it. So I'd like to apologize to him one day if I ever meet him. Any other questions?
When did you discover that you could make a livelihood doing this?
It was tough. When I first started, I was working for Marvel Comics in 1990. The page rates were really low. It was worse than minimum wage because you get paid not by the hour, but by the amount of pages that you produce. So if you're getting, at that time I was getting $80 a page, but it was taking me days to draw a page or a week to draw a page. So it was really tough. And it wasn't until Image came around that all the companies had to start paying the artists more, the creators more. So Image was very instrumental in making this career sustainable. But otherwise, people are just doing it for the love of it, not for the paycheck.
I've seen you sketching on the floor using like the brushings. Where did you learn that?
You know, it's when I can't remember when I picked it up. I used to use a crocodile nib, it's a hard nib that you use in calligraphy. It's made out of metal. You just dip it into the ink, and you can get fine lines with it. And in the 90s, a lot of artists were using that, but I found it really stiff, and I couldn't get the kind of lines that I wanted. So I picked up a brush so that I could get a more organic shape, a more organic flow. You can go from thick to you can go from really thin to really thick. Whereas with a crocodile nib, you can only go from really thin to slightly less thin. So it wasn't very forgiving. And also the speed, with the brush, it's just, you just go with the flow, and even if you make a mistake, it looks intentional. I like Bob Ross says, happy accidents. But I can't pinpoint when I picked it up, and I know it took me a long time to get comfortable with it.
Okay.
And it's, I use a Winsor Newton Series 7 sable brush. Back in the day, the quality was great.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say even 10 years ago, every brush you got, it was perfect. But now, I don't know what they're doing, but maybe only one out of 20 brushes that I buy is good. The others, they split on you immediately. The tips are rounded, they're not sharp. It's terrible, but I haven't been able to find a replacement.
Mm.
Everything's gone down in quality, right? Life just sucks now. Any other questions?
When you get scripts, do you kind of prefer if the writer's like very blatantly laying out the panels that they want to see, or do you want them to you prefer for them to give you kind of free range to do whatever layout you want and kind of set the scene?
It really depends on the story. General rule of thumb, I like everything to be in the middle ground. I don't want it to be too detailed, but at the same time, I don't want it to be too loose, because then the artist has to do all the work. But I've worked both ways. So when I first started at Marvel, they had this thing called the Marvel style.
Mm-hmm.
The writers would send you a script for a 22-page book. Not a script, it's just a plot. There's no dialogue. And if there is dialogue, it's just little snippets here and there to tell you what's going on. But for a 22-page book, the plot would be maybe typed out on one sheet of paper or maybe two. And it's up to the artist to break it down and decide how the action flows. So if you see books from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even, a lot of that work is being done by the artist. A lot of the fight scenes, the choreography, most of it is the artist. Then there are some writers like Alan Moore, Grant Morrison. Before I get into that, so in the Marvel style, the artist would do that, then the artwork would go to back to the writer, and then the writer would put in the dialogue. So it was more collaborative, but at the same time, the artist did have to do a lot of work. Then there were writers like Grant Morrison and Alan Moore that gave you everything. They broke it down into panels. If you've ever read an Alan Moore script for a 22-page book, it's probably like 40 or 50 pages. So, 40 pages versus 2 pages. It's a big difference. But at the same time, there's a lot more pressure because you have to convey that information. You're trying to get as much information on there that the writer wants in order order to tell the story. And with Alan Moore, every little detail matters. But you know, when I was working on Namor with John Byrne, the script would be like pages 14 through 18. Dr. Doom and Namor fight. And so I know artists got a lot of flack for doing double page spreads and splash pages, but hey, why not? You know, that's what the writer gave me. Guess what? You're going to get a lot of splash pages and double page spreads. And then when I worked with Grant Morrison on Fantastic Four 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, the scripts were really detailed because the story was so well thought out that even though it was detailed, I didn't have to do as much work because he had resolved everything. Everything was already there. I didn't have a million choices. It wasn't, you know, Reed fights Dr. Doom for 4 pages. It was, he does this in this panel, he does this, and this is what should be happening in this panel. And normally I would find that restrictive, but, you know, it's Grant Morrison, he's a genius, so, you know, to this day, I think that's the best story I've ever drawn. It really challenged me too, because there are things that I would avoid drawing if I had a choice. You know, I don't want to draw Johnny Storm walking down Times Square with a big crowd, you know, but if it's in the script, I have to draw it. Any other questions?
Just kind of as a follow-up, so obviously, especially if you're writing for like Grant Morrison, a lot of his stuff kind of will braid physics and reality.
Yeah.
Is that harder for you to draw things that kind of go against what, you know, normal people would be doing when they're walking, and like kind of getting sucked into portals, that type of drawing?
It is and it isn't. You can have, you know, to me the hardest thing to draw would be 2 people talking in a coffee shop for 4 pages. How do you make that interesting? I can't. And I don't want to draw that. I don't want to draw people talking. I know you have to occasionally because, you know, you need to get the story told. But as an artist, it's just not very exciting to draw. But if you have someone like Grant Morrison on the, you know, he's on the extreme side of it, but he'll say something like, Reed Richards is playing a virtual chess game with Dr. Doom, and I want all the panels to look like they're parts of the chessboard, and they should be moving around like chess pieces in this visual, psychedelic, kaleidoscope type double page spread. What? So yeah, that's incredibly difficult to do, but it's fun. But at the same time, it's disappointing because I know, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna expect a lot more, and was I able to bring his story to life, or did I let him down in this respect or that? So when an artist asks, when a writer asks you for something that complicated, you know, you just hope you're up for the job, and it forces you to draw differently than you normally would.
So when they are that complicated, have you ever had to just tell someone, no, that's too complicated, and bring it down a notch?
No, you don't tell them, you just do it.
Easier to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. When I worked with Paul Jenkins on the Inhumans, I did that to him a lot. You know, we had deadlines, so I had to get the book out. And when the script said, Black Bolt is walking out onto the balcony and he sees all of the Inhumans, the whole city assembled to hear him not talk because Black Bolt can't talk.